So let's get straight into our first debate. Do we really need a minister for common sense? MP and TV presenter Esther McVey has been brought back into cabinet as part of Rishi Sunak's reshuffle. She's officially known as the Minister Without Portfolio, but she's reportedly being tasked with leading the so-called anti-woke agenda and acting as a minister for common sense. However, even some of her own party are struggling to understand exactly what that means. Let's have a listen to MP Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I think what's happened in the Cabinet Office is very strange, that an extremely experienced, capable minister who was doing excellent work in terms of making the government more efficient and run properly in the form of Jeremy Quinn gets moved out to create a tokenistic post. I think that's very strange. Well, what is a czar for wokedom? What does it mean? I don't believe in tokenistic phrases for government posts. I think you should have proper titles like Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary.
Or Minister for Brexit Opportunities, which was Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's title. I think you forgot about that one.
Yeah, that happens with hypocrites. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. OK, we've gone hard in there, straight in for the two-footed tackle. Shola, do we need a minister for common sense or to fight to fight the woke agenda, I suppose it should be?
This country needs a minister for common sense like it needs a gun to the head. Clearly, we don't. OK, this useless minister is nothing but a strategy by a far-right Tory government to place in the centre anti-woke nonsense as substantive policy. Esther McVey is now the new face for the government-friendly, far-right divisive rhetoric that clearly there's a void of egregious inhumanity now that Suella Braverman has been sacked. And the reality here is that Rishi's Minister for Common Sense is nothing but a glorified army general of the thought police. And if you think about it, that is the polar opposite of the whole, culture warrior rhetoric and freedom of speech nonsense that these hypocrites keep chanting in this government. And so basically for me, what Rishi Sunak has done and what this Tory government has done with this position is to place on the general election ballot their stance against civil rights and social justice, because being woke, that is actually what being woke is about. Social justice, racial justice, civil rights.
Okay.
Quite as corrupted as usual by...
I wonder whether also we should be clear whether people understand exactly what we mean by woke. And the problem that I think some people have pointed out with this appointment is that if you're going to have a minister for common sense or to fight the woke agenda, you're going to have to define what that is. And notoriously, it's been difficult to define. Surveys constantly come up with the same number of people feeling that they're anti-woke, with the same number of people identifying as woke, but the majority of everyone saying, I don't actually quite know what it means.
Well, people who don't know what woke is, it's because they do not listen to black people. That term came from black people.
Sure,
of course, white people have come to co-opt
the history of it. Of course, the history,
but
it has turned to mean something different. Geoff?
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't say that this government is far right. I think that if anybody's lived under a far right regime, they might take issue with that. I also don't know how helpful it is calling people gammons. I mean, if we're trying to have inclusive gammons, is a word.
Yeah, let's be inclusive of gammons too, please.
Well, I mean,
you know exactly what I mean.
I'm just saying it's not helpful. I'm not saying I'm massively offended by it.
But was it helpful, for example, for Suella Braverman to be saying, what was she saying, the tofu-eating wokerati?
It wasn't. No, I'm against all of this nonsense. Right. And I'm against this post. This is one place we do agree. I think if you've come up with a ministerial post that sounds like it might be from a Monty Python sketch. It does sound like that, doesn't it? It straight away sounds quite comical. I guess it's supposed to be an olive branch to the right, but it's more of a twig. It's not really a full branch. And I think that what Rishi Sunak is sort of doing is he's kind of gone, look, I've had some of the more combative elements in my cabinet, and those people can sometimes be a political liability. In some respects, they do speak up for things that people believe in, but they also give him problems, such as the comments about hate marches and so on. So maybe he just wants a quiet life. Esther McVey, if you're looking at Suella Braverman versus Esther McVey is a more competent communicator, I think, marginally. But I think that
GB News broadcaster is a competent communicator. I do not think so.
To be fair to her, she was a broadcaster before that as well. She's had a long broadcasting career.
This is almost like Boris Johnson going to GB News. At the end of the day, it tells you what they are like. My point is, they're probably an effective communicator to the politically illiterate base.
I just don't understand of continually saying, well, there's this group of people that are just stupid and they don't understand anything. What I would say...
No, they do understand. But they're being deliberately...
Okay, so the people you can have problems with people like Boris Johnson and Esther McVey, but just saying that anybody that identifies with some of their concerns is politically illiterate, again, I'm not sure that's...
That is true, though.
Okay, but before we stray too far, you both don't think that this is a necessary job in Cabinet?
Necessary doesn't even come into it.
Okay, fine.
Well, I would say that there are some of these concerns, but they could be handled. Like if you talk about calling breastfeeding, chest feeding, these are unusual things to a lot of people. That should be handled under the health brief. Stuff about, who gets to be taught in the curriculum.
Should be within each brief.
Yeah, that comes under
Okay, well,
education.
let's get a slightly different opinion. Joining us for this debate is Solicitor Nick Freeman, a friend of the show. Nick, thanks for giving us your time, as always.
Good afternoon, John. Good afternoon, Alexis.
Look, what do you make of this appointment? Do you really think that we need to be paying a minister to attend Cabinet in order to be the minister for so-called common sense? Does this say that sort of we've lost common sense and we need a minister to get it back?
Well, it's up there with the Ministry of Silly Walks, isn't it, in the Monty Python sketch. It's a real sad indictment that we're actually having this discussion, because you would like to think that any minister that passes a policy and that ultimately comes into legislation or just remains policy would have common sense attached to it. But what's happened is, because of the certain agenda of, in my view, a minority of people, things have been stretched to a ridiculous state, and common sense has left the room, and we shouldn't need this. It is ridiculous that we need it. Okay. Every ministry should have its own common sense to attach to every policy. But common sense has been distorted by a tiny minority. So, for example, Esther McVey, her appointment is designed to placate the right, without question, in the sacking of Suella Braverman. But she's there to deal with specific problems. And if I can give you an example, for example, diversity training. She says one of her particular functions will be to reduce the number of days that businesses, including my own business, will spend. Hello.
You're still with us.
We'll spend dealing with diversity training. So she aims to reduce the number of days. That will save the economy £500 million a year. As a lawyer, I have to fill in a form that specifies my sexuality, etc., etc. Many professions do. That probably isn't appropriate to be a good lawyer. And I think she aims to tackle and make these aspects, which are necessary, but make them proportionate. At the moment, they've tilted to such an extent that you think, actually, where's the sensibility in this? It is ridiculous. Where's the wisdom? Where's the intuitive that's attached to this? What are we trying to achieve? Now, as I say, we shouldn't need this, but because of the agenda of a small minority of people that have distorted policies and distorted their own causes, Nick, we need something to balance it. And I think that's a specific purpose to call it out.
You made your point. Let me go back to Shola, because you're a lawyer too.
Yes.
Are things like diversity training, filling in forms, are they getting in the way?
Of course not. I was actually nodding to what Nick was saying until he used this as an example, because you can't be a lawyer in vacuum. Mm-hmm. The reason why diversity training became important is because even in law firms, in any workplace and workspace, all of the issues that affect us in our social and cultural environment are brought into the workspace, which is why it's necessary to have this training, this openness, this transparency. So to use this as an example and to tell me that a minister is necessary to cut down the hours and to try to back it up with money, knowing fully well that diversity in itself and inclusion actually bring in a whole lot of commercial value to businesses, because we begin to work better together and we are more inclusive. So I don't agree with that.
All right, let me pause you there. Let's find out what people are saying at home. Pete has called in from Surrey. Pete, good afternoon. What would you like to say? Do you think we really need to be paying for a minister to attend Cabinet to make sure that all policies that come out of the government have got common sense attached to them?
Absolutely not. We don't need a minister for common sense. What we do need is a Prime Minister with common sense. So what I would say is, Nigel, go and get in the jungle, win it, get out.
God, this has taken a turn that I didn't expect.
Dear.
So you think Nigel Farage should lead the country because he's got all the common sense?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, dear.
He speaks common sense. You know, I'm sorry, I've been a Conservative all my life.
Right.
But I'm just sick of the politics at the moment.
Well, maybe, you know, that bridge that they come out at the end, maybe that could just keep going all the way to number 10.
To number 10 for Australia. Pete, what's made you change your mind? You said you've been a Conservative. Was it yesterday's reshuffle that did it?
Well, I actually thought Suella Braverman spoke quite a lot of common sense.
Oh, my God.
I thought you would say that. Yeah.
Jesus, give me strength.
Yeah.
And I just think with Sunak and Starmer, my God, I mean, I'd prefer Sunak over Starmer.
Right.
But just need someone.
Can I just say?
Hang on a second. We need a Prime Minister with common sense.
Okay. All right, you've made that point. Go on, Shola.
I think Pete makes a perfect case for why common sense is not common, okay? I agree with him that we need a prime minister with common sense, but bringing people like Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman as epitomizing common sense is nonsense. It tells you that common sense has a whole different agenda when it comes to the right wing of this society. Common sense is a word Boris Johnson kept using during the pandemic. Oh, we just trust people with their common sense and nobody will get COVID. This is kind of nonsense that's pervaded the society.
I think Pete makes one point in terms of how politics will now look to the public. If you look at opposite sides of the bench at PMQs, you'll see Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper. On the other side, you're going to see Sunak, Hunt, Cameron. These are very technocratic people.
Yeah.
Now, people might not like firebrands on other sides, but we have moved to, a lot of people be wondering, whether it's different cheeks of the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pete. I mean, some people may say that the people that oozed so-called common sense, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here, people like Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Suella Braverman, they've all had a go. They've all had a go.
And it's a lack of competence, actually. They do represent a constituency in Britain. They say things that people agree with, but they've all done things in office which lost them credibility.
But that's conflating difference of opinion with common sense. So common sense is not about having an opinion
agreeing with somebody.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. Let's find out what Robin's saying. Robin in Gloucestershire. Robin, good afternoon.
Hi. Really feeling your pain, Shola, and despair, because common sense, where the hell has common sense got us? It's got us into so much trouble. The previous caller sums up. If that's common sense, we don't need it. What we need is somebody who's very, very aware. Really, really aware. And understands what's the problem with understanding what being woke is? You're either awake or you're asleep. Most people who talk about common sense are asleep.
Well, Robin, how about Nick's point that there are obstacles, some see it, put in place for companies that have to sort of tick boxes in order to appear to have done all their diversity training, or that's reducing their capacity to spend money on other areas of the business. They're draining money. That somehow we need to, use the common sense to save money, but at the same time be woke to the needs of people in the workplace. Do we not need somebody who just makes sure that all the bits that we put in front of people in order to tick those boxes actually work for the good of everybody?
Well, it's either accountancy or you work for the best things, for the best of people. If this is about money, then I think we need to have another look at our values.
Okay. All right, Robin, thank you. I'm going to leave it there.
Robin, well said.
Very strong call. Nick, just before we go, we heard from Pete earlier. The king of common sense is currently going to be spending some time eating bugs in the jungle. Would you like Nigel Farage to be in charge? You're a fan of common sense. Do you think he's got all of it?
Well, Alexis, common sense means, what it illustrates is common sense means lots of different things to different people. Common sense to me is what is sensible, what makes sense. And obviously, I mean, I like Nigel Farage. I like a lot of his policies. And he's a very bright, intelligent guy. And I wish him a very happy celebrity trip. Sorry, Shola. Whether or not he should be Prime Minister, I don't think he actually wants that gig. And I think before we discuss it, we should ask him, do you want the gig? I think the answer will be a resounding no.
OK. All right. Well, look, I'm going to leave it there. Nick, thank you, as always. I don't think we got to the bottom of that.
No, Nick, I think you and I will have more discussions next time we see you.
OK. No, definitely.